Good morning. Welcome to my thought for the day. I was going to look at one of these lists of 3 or 4 things in Proverbs 30, but I feel I should talk about just a simple thought, really, from verse 20 of Proverbs 30. This is the way of an adulteress. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I've done no wrong. And I was just thinking, what makes something that we do or don't do right or wrong? Where is the determination of what is right and wrong? What is moral and amoral or immoral? Where does that come from? There's a sense in which very much in our makeup, our conscience tells us when things are right and wrong. If we're brought up in a Christian home, we're taught the principles of the Scripture, and we know when something is right or wrong. But in our world, the world in which we live, there are many, many people who think they're doing nothing wrong because they are doing what our society says is perfectly all right to do. And they do it. They behave whichever way they're behaving. And they say, I'm not doing anything wrong. This is this is perfectly all right. It's not doing anybody any harm. I'm not hurting anybody. Here's an interesting reflection. I remember watching a programme. I don't know what it was called. I can't remember what the name of the programme was. But the premise of the programme was that they sought out in each programme, I think it was 3 people who had been helped in a very critical situation. And they wanted to find the person who had helped them so that they could say thank you. They looked at people in war-torn situations who had been helped out of the situation. I think one girl was a child, and I think it was in Sarajevo or one of these Baltic states when there was a war going on, and this person that they were looking for had organised a coach and helped all these children escape over the border into the next country. But there was also the first one that they looked at was a man who was probably in his mid-30s, who had been involved in the 7/7 bombings, I think, and was in one of the underground trains, and the train had crashed, had exploded with this bomb, and they were in complete darkness, and someone had talked to him and held his hand in the dark, and he wanted to find this particular person who'd helped him. Now you may say, what's this got to do with this verse? Well, in the course of telling his story, this young man, without any instigation from anybody else, said, I was there in the dark. I couldn't see a single thing, couldn't see my hand in front of my face. It was so dark. It was terrifying. There were people screaming. You could smell smoke. You knew something awful had happened. You had no idea what it was. And he said, I said to God, if you let me get out of here, I'll stop being a homosexual. Now, what made him say that? Because he'd lived his life as if being homosexual was perfectly all right. But in that moment of crisis, he bargained with God, if you like, about the one thing in his life that he instinctively knew was wrong. I found that amazing as I watched that programme, because nobody had suggested that his lifestyle was wrong, and there was no need for him to even mention his lifestyle in that conversation. I mean, he could have said something like, well, if you let me get out of here, I'll marry my partner. I'll make it legal. But he didn't. He said, God, if you get me out of here, I will stop being a homosexual. I'll change my ways. He was asking for forgiveness. People saying, I'm not doing anything wrong, does not make what they're doing right. God has set before us the ways of life and the ways that lead to death and destruction. And he's done that for our good. He wants us to live the best, most fulfilled life we possibly can. And he's put before us the things that are right and wrong. And in this verse, this is the way of an adulteress. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I've done no wrong. It sounds like she's a kept woman, you know. She's somebody's on the side, and she is kept, fed and looked after, and she sees nothing wrong in what she's doing. You know, because somebody protests that they're perfectly entitled to do something does not make it right. And it is part of our duty as Christians to make opportunity to talk to people who are doing things that we know God does not like, and we know will bring them into judgment, to lead them to salvation. You know, in the Old Testament law, one of the things that people are told to do is to tell your brother when he's doing something wrong. Tell them. Don't hide it. I mean, it may break up a friendship, but it's their eternity we're talking about. And it's our eternity we're talking about. When we know something is wrong, we shouldn't do it. When we know it's wrong, what are we doing? Yes, well, there we are. This is the way of the adulteress. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I have done no wrong. But in her heart, in God's assessment of her, she is an adulteress. She's not a harlot, she's an adulteress. An adulteress is a married woman who sleeps with somebody else. An adulterer is a married man who sleeps with someone else. The Bible doesn't pull any punches, you know, and neither should we really. It's very hard, isn't it? We are called to a high calling. Well, I hope you managed to find some fellowship today, being the Lord's Day, and that you meet with some of God's people and worship him, as I will be doing later on this morning. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.